Good Wednesday morning, and welcome to Ice Age TV, the internal combustion engine YouTube channel. Come on this way, puppies. Come on, Scout, this way. Come on, pups. The conversations, and hoping not to chase dogs around here. I don't know why that seems to be such a problem lately. But yeah, so anyway, followers, good morning, and kind of an emotional video today that I'm not sure I'll hold my composure, but I'll try. And I guess they say that the show must go on. And I have a YouTube channel, people follow me, and I just feel like I like to keep things going on a daily basis. And oh, the phone's already ringing. It just doesn't end. It doesn't end, man. My life doesn't end. Who's trying to call me? And all right, so yeah, I just lost. So anyways, yeah, this is a day that is going to be the theme will be death. As much as I even think for me saying this on my YouTube channel, but I think I just feel like I got to do it. And it's about my nephew that sadly died Monday night on a motorcycle, and I've got a Honda hat on my head for a reason. And the reason I've got the Honda hat is because so many years ago, that's where he learned to ride motorcycles, in that field over there. And I was one of the first to buy him a Honda motorcycle. That was 1997. So for me, it kind of hits pretty close to home when you're a motorcycle enthusiast like I am. And so my nephew has had a very challenging life, and it's just a lot of things, a lot of pretty deep stuff. And so he's going to make the YouTube channel today a tribute. Come on, Willow, get in here. Tribute to my nephew, Micah Pace. Yeah, my brain's probably a little loopy today. It just isn't, this. So I got this phone call from my sister yesterday morning. And my family, we're pretty much texting and all the time. Willow, come on, Will. And so I just don't know what's going on here. Dogs about drive you nuts. Yeah, so rarely do I get a phone call from my sister. And usually when my phone rings, there's something not good going on. So yesterday morning, shortly after I posted my video, and I had to drive all the way to Bel Air, Maryland again in the Ford Power Boost over there. My sister informs me that my nephew had in some ways killed himself on his motorcycle because of a high-speed riding. And you can see that in the Pasco Times in Pasco County, Port Richey, Florida. My nephew's in the news of being a motorcyclist, 39 years old. That, and what's here? It's hard to kind of talk about this, but I just feel that when you lose a family member, you gotta acknowledge it. And I don't know if my dog. Willow. Hey, Willow, 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 come on, boy, Willow. Yeah, why is he playing this morning? Oh boy, the birds are showing back up and trashing all my cars and trailers. And yeah, what's going to be the adventure here for me when I'm supposed to be getting out of town? And yeah, that throws a whole nother, crook into things. I don't know. Play out, I may be going to Florida. I don't know. It's just so early that it's all happening. Oh, well, let's go. Come on. This just all played out. And so anyways, my theme of the channel, I thought, death. And I thought, well, this is me recognizing the sad passing of my nephew. And I just thought, well, there's so many things that you can also do in life relate with the death of the car industry. And there's a broad meaning. I guess the GPT, generative pre-trained transformer, could help me out here, right? The artificial intelligence, did that help me? The generative pre-trained transformer would probably give me guidance today. Do I need that in artificial intelligence? Yeah, that stuff's just crazy where it's all going. Yeah, for my nephew, it's just a very challenging life for him. And the key thing that my nephew didn't have was a father. Yeah, his father, and he was born 1984, Christmas Day. and I lived with him. So, for about 2 or 3 years, I actually lived with him as he was a little toddler growing up. My family all lived together, and me and my brother and two sisters. And then 1985, I broke off, and then everybody kind of started going their own way at that time. But for my nephew, he lost his father. It just wasn't a relationship that was meant to be in our marriage, and his father left him and never ever corresponded with him ever again in his life. And so that was huge, huge. If anybody here has family, I think that's just incredible, just beyond believable. And it goes on. I mean, there's this is just too close to home for me of things. So for my nephew and my family, we've always had compassion for him because that's always been a huge challenge. And back in the day, you go back to the 80s and 90s, how do you track down his father? And what's incredible is he reconnected with a sister he didn't even know was alive, a biological sister, because my sister remarried and had two more kids. And he just here like a year ago, if even that, he connected with his a sister he never even knew existed from his father, from another relationship. And his father sadly passed, but he was actually a motorcycle guy as well. And so I never really got the whole 9 yards on that. But at the same time, he did reconnect in some ways, I guess, with his father. But that was a very emotional time for him because he just always questioned why his father didn't reach out to him, because he knew, for the most part, where my nephew moved to Florida, my sister, like in 1990. And so for the most part, I think he knew. And if I'm correct, I think he lived in Kentucky, right near the Tennessee line, I think. I'm not real sure on all that stuff. But anyway, it's just a very emotional time for the family. And for me, let me get my day going here because it's just not easy here. And like I say, I'm trying to keep my YouTube channel going. And in some aspects, I think, do you make a YouTube channel about this? But I think myself too. I like to talk each day and share my life's experiences. And I can share that there's others that can relate. Until you lose a loved one, you just don't get it. You just understand. And so for me, kind of switching off of that, I thought to myself, well, let's talk about death. An aspect of what's really weird about all this is I read an article last night that involved the roadkill gang. Those guys are funny. I mean, boy, I'd take their job in a heartbeat. Those guys are just so funny. But anyways, Motor Trend had a whole dedication of the death of the Hellcat. I thought, wow, that's just so interesting because my nephew passed on Monday evening on February 6th at 8:15. Well, the motorcycle crash was at 8:15 p.m. and he passed at the hospital. That's what there's still a lot of unknowns of what happened to him in his crash, and I just thought that was so interesting that on February 6th, Motor Trend Magazine had a whole tribute to the death of the Hellcats. I was thinking, wow, that's kind of what made me think to myself, well, maybe today I'll have a theme of death. Who the heck wants to have that type of theme? I mean, sincerely, even for me, I'm just like, okay. So anyways, it was a really great article. Anybody can have access to that to go to Motor Trend. And it just talks about the death of the Ice Age, the EV slayer of the Ice Age. And that's something I say to people is I started this channel called Ice Age. And the reason I started is because I believe it's the internal combustion engine age. And I think that in some aspects I relate it with the dinosaur age, where the Ice Age killed the dinosaurs. I think that that's the reason, that's the thing that's going to play out. And in my lifetime, maybe, not totally, but in some ways, that you're going to start to see just the ice engines disappear. They're not going to be in cars. And that's even a broad and kind of to say that, even myself, like, man, I just don't know. I just think the hybrid technology is still going to be a prevalent product as the years progress. But when you read all these guidelines of the governing bodies that are just mandating these timelines of 1930, 35, 1950, here's Polestar that is raising their hand, and they're saying they can't see by 1950 the manufacturing that it requires to make these vehicles be able to meet these governing the Paris Agreement. The Paris Agreement has these incredibly strict guidelines of zero emissions, not only from the car itself, but from the manufacturing capacity to create the vehicle, which that's what so many people constantly talk about. And we have arguments among ourselves is that the electric vehicle is not a zero emission vehicle because the amount of emissions it took to create it. And then I read years ago that for a Tesla, it's like 45,000 miles before the vehicle really is now kind of at a zero emission comparison to a car. Meaning if you drive an ICE vehicle, how much emissions are emitted? What's the carbon footprint of that vehicle at 45,000 miles? And they're saying, well, a Tesla took X amount of carbon footprint. So it's not really till you get past that 45,000 mile mark that you now have bought a car that it's going to be zero emissions on conditions that your electrical company or however you recharge your vehicle is a zero emissions renewable energy. So, it just gets really, really deep. It's just beyond believable of where we are, where the guidelines, even manufacturers are raising their hand and just saying the policymakers making these decisions, it's going to be incredibly challenging. And I get that as a business person and a person of life that have challenges. You got to create challenges to make things happen. So in some aspects that's good. Some aspects, it's not realistic. And who's driving? That was what I was talking about, yesterday. Who's influencing all these radical guidelines? And I think for the most part, the average person here will say the green agenda. The green agenda is the ones behind the scenes that are the ones getting the governing bodies to create these really strict guidelines. And then those governing bodies are the ones that kind of give the automotive industry a heads up of how you're going to play the game if you want to be in the game. And it's just it's just incredible on how more than ever we as citizens are doing things based on the select few that are trying to drive everything for the majority. But it just seemed to me, and I could be out of touch on that. I'm sure some people are like, well, the governing bodies have been around for ages and they've always had control. I agree with that, but at the same time, it seems like more than ever, the manufacturers are listening more to a select few people than the masses. And then you go to the death of the ICE vehicle, and you can honestly look at the electric vehicles, and you can give it credentials for the incredible power these vehicles are coming to the market with. So in the aspect of just incredible power, speed, technology, there's no doubt the electric vehicle is going to go past the ice age vehicles at warp speeds, basically. Just beyond, for me, I just think it's hard to believe that you're going to go and buy a 1,200 horsepower battery packed car, and when does the governing body step in and control that? How do they control that remotely, right? I could have some coffee here and don't even have an appetite for breakfast. It's just one of those days. If anybody's gone through losing somebody, and we've been pretty fortunate in my family. We've been very blessed. I have a very godly family, and we've been blessed because we just haven't lost many. But I know of other families that have lost many, and it's very challenging. I to this date lost my father-in-law. And to this date, I think about that guy all the time and miss him. And so anyways, yeah, so the speed. So here's the thing. And what kind of just triggered me on that is my nephew, the article reads that he was speeding in his motorcycle. And so the speed of that motorcycle sadly killed him. And it wasn't the speed of the motorcycle, it was the way he was riding it. And unfortunately for me, when I was in Florida, he came by and visited, and he just talked and so many things he was doing. I was just like, you're going to kill yourself. You just can't do these things. So it's really sad for my nephew. That's what has played out in my family. And as an individual, you think, what could you have done? I mean, who isn't like that? For me, believe it or not, in 1997, when my nephew was just 13 years old, he was actually 12, he'd be turning 13, and I saw who he's developing into, and I had a hard conversation with my wife, and I really said, I think we should keep him and try to get him going in the right direction. And I knew at that time, at the age of my life, my marriage, my wife had only been married a year, and my responsibility is just getting my career going, and he had a family in Florida. And so I knew that wasn't, really realistic. But at that age, I already saw of what was going on in his life because his father had abandoned him. And it gets heavy and deep, and I'm not going to spend the whole morning on that. I'm trying to recognize my nephew, who's 39 years old and has sadly perished. But anyway, so you go back to the vehicles, these electric vehicles, the speed of these vehicles. I mean, wow. And what is it going to do? I mean, already I live the roads. I live the roads in my vehicles and cars in these areas of the D.C., Baltimore. I go to Florida. I go to Tennessee. And the pace of the people drive, it's just sometimes maddening. And I mean, I'm not the perfect driver by any means. I mean, I get up the road, but some days I might get up the road, and it's just beyond believable. You're just going down the road, and the guy goes by at 100 plus miles an hour, and you're just like, wow, and just like, you can just tell their attitude is like, so what? Who cares? And, we've all been part of it. A guy comes up on you, he cuts you off, he's just rude. And, how does that eventually play out? Yeah. What is it? And that's what I was thinking to myself, too. What's the annual death of people on motorcycles and in vehicles? And they said after the pandemic, kind of, now we're kind of back to normal. I think last year was actually an uptick on car deaths from previous pre-pandemic, which that's kind of interesting because we have so much technology in these cars more than ever today that should help us really be safer in so many aspects. But it's the human error. Once again, that's when you read the article of my nephew, what it says is that he lost control of the motorcycle. So I don't know the whole story. I don't know. Supposedly a car pulled out in front of him and he locked the bike up and he went down. I think that's what happened. Here's what's really crazy. If you see that article, some drunk lady got pulled over during the investigation, the crash, because some drunk lady drives through the yellow, barricaded part of the road off where my nephew's motorcycle is, and she runs over evidence. What was the evidence? I have no idea. So she runs over evidence. The police pull her over. She's drunk. She's arrested on the spot. DUI. This stuff goes on all the time. You hear all the time these police officers are on the side of the road and they get killed because people get fixated on, the lights and they start looking at it. We all know. The number one thing I've heard if you're a race driver is when you're going to crash, don't look at what you're going to crash into. Look at what you don't want to crash into. And that's what we do as humans. You drive on the road, when you take and turn your eyes, look over there, the car goes left. If you look over to the right, the car goes right. So if you're fixated on something way out in front of you and you're obliterated, you're probably going to drive right into whatever your eyes are looking at. It goes on all the time. Very sad that what happens. Yeah, so I didn't watch any news last night. I'm hearing all this news about the State of the Union address. Was it the death of the Union address? I didn't watch it. I don't watch a lot of news. And I do that on purpose because I don't want to start radiating through my channel that I'm some news guy on TV just reiterating what they said. And I really do. And I try to kind of keep more of a middle of the road. I try to not get I just don't want a YouTube channel of hate and divisions. I want a YouTube channel that I share my experiences and my fun and those that follow me can feel like they're part of that, and you can see things that maybe you wouldn't see, and then hear ideas and views that hopefully you as an individual can sit back and go, yeah, I mean that makes sense, and not be the person trying to pitch an agenda. And there goes the dogs. Yeah, instead of pitching an agenda, that's not what I'm about here in my YouTube channel. So, anyways, and here's right now a picture of a New York Police Department off-duty cop shot during attempted robbery. Young man, young police officer, and yeah, the death. I think the death of the police force. That's another thing that I think to myself. Okay, we've talked about the death of the Ice Age. That does it really play out? Well, they're saying for the Hellcat, that whole article, the death of the Hellcats is the 2023. Apparently, you're saying December 2023 is the last month of them building the Hellcat engine. Then it goes off into the sunset, and there may be some crate motors, and they may do like just a little limited ghost edition and some special edition cars. But this is it. We've got now basically 10 months before the death of the Hellcat engine is done. It's expired. Just like the Predator motor. I talked to you about the Romeo Ford power plant that shuttered the doors, where the Predator has now been taken to the Ford other manufacturing plant for the new Raptor R, and they call it the Coronova, or it starts with a C. I just can't remember that name of the new motor. It's the same motor. It's a Predator motor, but it just has a different supercharger on it. So they renamed it to being the Raptor R truck, so that the GT500's heritage lives on of the Predator motor was the motor of that era and that time, and not to be sharing it with others. That's kind of weird too. Think about it. Wonder why Hellcat, wonder why Stellantis or Dodge, they didn't do the same thing once they put that Hellcat motor into a Ram TRX or put it into the Durango. I'm just still stunned that Dodge never did a two-door. Then you had a two-door lowered, it could be four-wheel drive truck, but a lowered two-door Viper SRT10 lookalike comeback with a Hellcat motor in it. Why didn't they do that? I can't believe that Tim Kanukas didn't figure that out. That just blows me away. I'd have one of those things. Oh, I'd love to have one of those things. That would be one of those things where I probably would keep that forever, because that'd be such a rare truck. And I know people have built them and done all that. But anyways, the roadkill thing last night, that was, oh my gosh, I just can't believe. I mean, for me, I'm such a compassionate guy for cars that I just can't believe when I watched that video of the two guys. I don't watch roadkill much, but those two guys, I think they're funny. And I don't even know their names. I mean, I just don't. I should follow them, but I just haven't really. But I remember seeing that video a while back, but I watched it last night. I didn't really sleep at all last night. So I watched, I just did lots of reading and watching the videos. And to see those guys take, first of all, what they did is they all met up at some big airport, and they had the Dodge Charger Hellcat, the Dodge Challenger Hellcat, and they had the Dodge Viper. And it was all about the burnouts. They're all doing burnouts, and that's pretty fun. And they roll up in the Chevy stepside truck, probably like a 1978 truck, something like I used to have, but it's a two-wheel drive, yeah. And the guy rolls up with his dog and everything, and it's all about the burnouts. And so they're doing burnouts on all the Hellcats, and they're trying to learn how to drift, and it's just great stuff. And then they hook up all three cars. I'm surprised how they get those things. I guess they attach them to the rear axles or axle housing, and they're all attached to one another, tethered to each other, doing massive burnouts. They went through 12 Pirelli all-season tires, 12. So between the two Hellcats, they ended up burning up a set on each one plus one. And I guess, well, I don't know about the Viper. Yeah, the Viper too, I guess. I guess it was all three cars that have all new set of tires. And so, but then they took the cars out to the middle of the desert or wherever, and they went to this like motocross track or dirt bike track, and they drove these things around the dirt track, and these Hellcats just trashing them. This is reminding me of my brother in California. This is no lie. the stories I could tell my family and my, I mean, just it's just too much information, right? TMI, yeah, 75. I think like 75. My brother took my dad's Pontiac Le Mans two door. This is like the Dukes of Hazzard. I'm not embellishing. So we lived out there in that Walnut Creek, Lafayette, Orinda area of California. And my brother would go out to the orchard fields and he would go hot dog in my dad's two-door Pontiac Le Mans. This is the car that was my dad's first brand new car he ever bought in his whole lifetime. I remember this day going with my father to the dealership, and it was either like 1970, I think, and he bought that beautiful Pontiac two-door Le Mans car. It was a real pretty light blue with like I think it had like a black vinyl top. And that was like his pride and joy. That was his first accomplishment in life of having a brand new car ever. And so so now here you fast forward like 1975, my brother's out there hot dogging his car out in apple orchard fields. And then he's painted like a number on the side of it. I mean, just totally, my dad. Oh gosh, I'm gonna a father to have. Yeah, you can't have my dad. I got him. All right. So here's what's classic. My dad has a friend that he hasn't seen for years that comes to visit with family, and they bring an RV because they're going across the country seeing things. And I'll never forget, we're all sitting in the house, and my brother walks in the front door, and he pulls my dad aside, and he's talking, and before long, we're in an RV driving up this orchard, over the mountains. You remember, California is hilly. We're driving up the back dirt trails, fire trails. My brother has gone off-roading, and he's taking the car down a ravine, and it's stuck at the bottom of the ravine of where you're looking way up a hill. It took 2 tow trucks to get that car out of that ravine. Yeah. So my brother, he's driving around. So the whole reason I'm bringing that pop in my head is because here's these guys from Roadkill. They're driving the Hellcats, the Charger and the Challenger, and even the Viper around a dirt motorcycle track, beating the crap out of them. And the windows are down, and they're all just laughing. I mean, this makes me think when I was a kid. And they're just all laughing the whole time they're in the car, just beating the crap out of it. Dust is just, proliferating the whole interior of the car. I mean, and then when they're done, they get out and they look at the back of the Charger Hellcat, the rear valance. That's all been ripped off. When they get out of the Dodge Challenger, the whole front end's been ripped off, or you can see like the whole intercooler for the supercharger. And then on the Viper, They did go a little tamer because that was a carbon fiber special edition Viper. So they didn't go as radical. So that one there, it didn't get too beat up, but they drove around the windows open. It's just freaking, and the whole agreement was 3 of them had to ride in the cars as they did this. And it's just like watching these high school kids go out and terrorize their parents' car. And so the Viper, they tried to get one guy in the back hatch. So they get all 3 of them. Oh, what a show, Roadkill. If anyone can find that video, watch that video. It's a great video. It's it's about as long as my videos. It's like 39 minutes. Yeah, wow. Yeah, so anyways, just kind of wrapping this up, I think to myself, the death of America. I mean, it seems it's interesting is when I was growing up, it was to talk the death of America. And that came from like Iran. That was kind of a thing back in the 80s. Death of America was more about Iran, hating the Western civilization. And that was, and then us Americans like, yeah, right, you Iranians, you want to play? We'll show you how to play. Boy, oh boy. Are we at the death of America every bit more than ever in our own lifetime? Domestic side? Wow. I think to myself, wow, the death of America. I mean, I think the death of the educational system. Have you really started hearing the stories of education? Is it education anymore and not more brainwashing? I mean, beyond believable what I'm hearing, the stories on the death of education because of just the constant mocking of the Constitution, the freedom of rights, freedom of guns, you know, the right to bear arms, freedom of religion. The list goes on and on and on. It's just incredible that we are at such modern times of the wish for the death of America is upon us like never seen. 1619 readings, critical race theory, reparations, which I think is going to be separations. Does that really play out? Woke. I mean, okay, so I'm just kind of getting bits and pieces, but apparently Sandra Sandra, whatever, the governor is of there, Arkansas, whatever, Michael Huckabee, it's how Sandra, whatever her middle name is and last name. But anyway, she was, you know, in so many words, saying the country's gone, the governing powers have gone woke. And yeah, there's all I know there's been highlights of the speech and everything. I'm not going to get into all that. I mean, once again, I like to share ideas and views and not divide us here. But at the same time, I think to myself, boy, oh boy, death, you know, the death of our country is it. And then we just, in the stance that we take when other countries do things to us, where we seem to be just kind of like, oh, well, whatever. Wow. All right, everybody, I'm going to kind of wrap it up there. This is a tribute video to my nephew that sadly lost a life, and there's a lot to it. I just don't think that people watch my channel really need to hear all the whole 9 yards and stories. It's more personal stuff, and we all have challenges, and just sadly he took his life. And there's a lot more to this than I really want to get into and share, because it's much deeper than this. But at the same time, for me as an individual, we've all been here and we've all witnessed death, and it's challenging, very challenging. So for me today, this was a hard video, and I'm just going to kind of wrap it up with that. Hey everybody, thanks so much for the comments and support. And stay tuned. And what are we going to do about going to Tennessee? I don't know. So thank you, and God bless.